What would you do if you discovered a hidden part of your loved one's life? The low hum of fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, their sterile glow muted by the overcast sky visible through the tall windows of the conference room. Shadows clung to the corners, deepening the oppressive atmosphere that weighed on Emily Carter's slender frame as she stood awkwardly near the back of the room. Her auburn hair was pulled back loosely, strands escaping to frame a face taut with unease. The old wooden floor creaked beneath her feet with every subtle shift of weight, the sound swallowed quickly by the murmurs and sharp, clipped exchanges of her colleagues around a long, glossy table. A projector flickered to life, illuminating sharp graphics of marketing strategies and campaign plans that bounced off the muted blues and grays of the worn Victorian walls. Emily's voice, careful and hesitant, attempted to rise above the chatter as she proposed her idea. What if we rebrand the campaign to mirror the town's heritage? A subtle nod to the lighthouse, it's iconic, and people connect with history. Her words hung in the air, fragile as the dust floating in the cold light. A woman seated nearest to her, arms crossed and eyes sharp, interjected smoothly, "Emily, with all due respect, that feels a bit safe. We're aiming for innovation here, not nostalgia." The flicker of doubt that had settled in Emily's stomach twisted tighter as another colleague nodded in agreement, adding, "Yeah, the market's moving fast. We need bold, disruptive ideas, not the same old local clichés." Emily swallowed hard, the taste of bitterness rising. Her mind raced, searching for a defense, but the uncertainty muffled her words, turning them faint and ineffective. The laughter, low and veiled, spread subtly from one corner of the room to another, a cold wave that left her feeling naked and exposed. Her eyes darted to the window, where the relentless sea churned beneath a slate-gray sky, a vast, unknowable expanse that mirrored her own swirling insecurities. She glimpsed the silhouette of the abandoned lighthouse standing stoic, distant, perched on the cliffs like a sentinel watching over secrets yet untold. The meeting pressed on without her theer voices, a cacophony she could no longer penetrate. Emily's heart thundered painfully with each laugh and dismissive glance, a private storm raging beneath her calm exterior. Her fingers tightened around the strap of a battered leather satchel, the worn fabric scratched and faded, the only tangible memory of struggles past and dreams still flickering weakly beneath despair. The room grew warmer, fluorescent lights casting elongated shadows that seemed to stretch toward her like silent accusations. The pile of unused napkins beside her on the long table suddenly drew her attention, small and innocuous, a stark contrast to the magnitude of her humiliation. With slow, deliberate motions, she brushed one beneath her notes, as though trying to anchor herself to some semblance of order in the chaos. "Emily?" The voice was sharp, breaking through like a lone beacon, but it belonged to the director's gaze, cool, professional, yet void of encouragement. "We appreciate your effort," he said carefully, the words more a dismissal than praise. "But we'll be moving forward without your concept." The finality struck with a dull thud, reverberating deep within her chest. Her cheeks flushed, a tide of heat that spread unevenly as she nodded quietly, unable to summon the courage to argue, to fight. The murmur of the room resumed, the buzz of voices resumed, her idea shelved, her presence barely acknowledged. She stepped back, retreating toward the heavy door, the click of the closing latch an echoing punctuation to the chapter she had quietly lost. Her breath caught as she lingered by the window once more, fingers tracing the laced frost that had begun to creep along the glass. Outside, the ocean's endless roll whispered secrets of distant depths, its tide relentless in its pull, just like the invisible tides of doubt and hope shifting within her. The abandoned lighthouse, shrouded in fog and mystery, stood a silent witness to the momentous, solitary guide in a sea of uncertainty. And as she stepped away from the gathering, the weight of invisibility settled over her like a shroud, the first chord of a hidden symphony waiting to be heard. After the empty echo of rejection in the conference room, Emily retreated through the familiar streets of her coastal town, her steps light yet burdened beneath the overcast sky. The sands of an impending dusk stretched out before her, cloaking the Victorian houses and narrow lanes in a subdued blue-gray haze. The ocean whispered softly in the distance, waves tracing ancient patterns on the Sharia lullaby muted by the heavy shadows gathering in her chest. Entering her small apartment, the worn wooden floorboards creaked beneath her feet as she closed the door behind her, shutting out the world that had made her invisible. The dim light filtered through the faded curtains, casting long, hesitant lines that danced with the rhythm of the slow, encroaching night. Her green eyes, usually so expressive, now seemed dimmed, clouds of doubt swirling within their depths. She dropped onto the frayed couch, the fabric worn like the layers peeling within her mind. Thoughts tangled, a churning storm of self-questioning and buried fears. How many times had she been overlooked? How many times had her voice dissolved into the background noise? Her fingers unconsciously curled around the edge of the seat, knuckles paling with silent rage and unspoken sorrow. The walls closed in with each breath, bearing the weight of meaningless exchanges and veiled dismissals. The room hummed quietly, the slow ticking of a broken clock, the distant call of seagulls dissolving into the night, and the soft patter of rain beginning against the window pane. Outside, the lighthouse stood stoic, its beam intermittently slicing through the thickening fog, a lone, unwavering sentinel amid the shifting tides. Her thoughts drifted to the stories she had imagined for that lighthouse, for the family history she barely knew and had quietly romanticized to fill the cracks within herself. The weight of her father's absence, a silent, looming presence, felt closer now, mingling with the sting of rejection. The loneliness pressed heavily, a tide pulling at her resolve as waves of doubt threatened to drag her deeper beneath the surface. Her breath quickened, chest tightening, eyes moistening, the silent ache of invisibility raw and fierce. Yet amid the suffocating dark, something flickered, a faint, stubborn pulse beneath the despair. Her hand brushed absent-mindedly over the edge of a forgotten leather-bound book on the shelf, its spine cracked and edges yellowed. It was a gift from years ago, dusty and neglected, yet somehow it offered a fragile anchor to a story yet to be rediscovered. The sound of the ocean's distant roar seeped through the cracked window, steady and endless, a reminder that beneath the surface of her doubts, life persisted, relentless and wild. In the quiet, Emily's gaze lifted toward the shadowed outline of the lighthouse beyond the shore. Its light was uncertain yet persistent, a beacon, she realized, not just for lost ships, but for lost souls. Her breath steadied. The storm within her wavered, a ripple of possibility stirring beneath the heavy layers of pain and shame. A faint resolve took shape, fragile but undeniable, a whispered promise she could not yet name. Emily's figure remained still against the pale glow of the fading day, the unsettled silence around her pregnant with the first fragile stirrings of change. The soft hum of the rainy night filtered through the cracked window as Emily knelt by the worn carpet beneath her bed, peeling away the dust and forgotten clutter with trembling hands. Each breath she drew was heavy with a mixture of defeat and desperation, a need to find something, anything, to anchor her sinking soul. Her fingers brushed against cold leather. A notebook, weathered and almost forgotten, pulled the weight of years and silence down into her palm. She drew the diary close, the faint scent of aged paper and ink mingling with the damp ocean air wafting faintly from the open window. The leather was cracked where the edges curled, fragile in places from time's slow decay. Her fingers traced the embossed cover, a small relief image of a lighthouse worn yet steady, a silent sentinel over time's relentless tides. The room around her blurred, the muted blues and grays melded into the somber hues of the diary she cradled. The rain drummed softly on the roof, a steady rhythm echoing the silent pulse of a secret awaiting revelation. Emily's gaze lifted from the aged book to the reflection in the shattered mirror, her green eyes lit by a fragile fire, a brewing storm beneath fragile calm. For a long moment, she hesitated, fingers trembling over the clasp. Then, with deliberate care, the cover fell open, revealing pages dense with cramped handwriting curled and looping. The ink faded but the emotions vibrant beneath the script. As she read the first entry, a chill crept over her skin. Here was a side of her father she had never known, the man she had so carefully etched into inescapable perfection in her mind. The diary was a mosaic of whispered confessions, regrets, dreams, and secrets that now seemed to stretch between past and present, shaking the foundation of her own identity. The ocean's muffled roar carried through the cracked window, a steady backdrop to the swell of emotions, waves that mirrored the ebb and flow within her heart. This was more than history. It was a living tide pulling her toward a truth she had long feared. A sudden flash of lightning split the sky, illuminating the abandoned lighthouse perched miles away on craggy cliffs. Its solitary beam pierced the encroaching storm, a symbol of isolation and guidance, much like the diary in Emily's hands, a beacon in the dark, fraught with mystery and hope. Her green eyes flickered with an intensity unknown before, a blend of pain, wonder, and fierce determination. This was no longer mere curiosity or escape. It was a call to uncover, to understand, to redefine. The room seemed to breathe with her awakening, the shadows softened, the air charged with the electricity of change. Emily closed the diary gently but with resolve, the faintest spark lighting in the depths of her being. She stood slowly, the weight of the diary a quiet but resolute anchor. The rain lessened outside, the breeze brushing through the open window carrying whispers of secrets yet untold. In that fragile moment, Emily's world shifted, not a resolution, but the first trembling step toward transformation, guided by the steady, unwavering light of the lighthouse and the untold stories waiting patiently beneath the surface. And as the storm's fury softened to a whisper, she turned toward the unknown, embracing the dawning of a journey that would redefine everything. The diary lay open on the rough wooden floorboards of Emily's dimly lit apartment, its fragile pages fluttering softly with the evening breeze sneaking in through the cracked window. Outside, the ocean's murmuring waves rolled relentlessly against the shore, a restless symphony that mirrored the turmoil stirring within her. The sky, a heavy slate gray, pressed down upon the coastal town like a somber cloak, its muted blues and steel grays casting long shadows through the room. Emily sat cross-legged beside the diary, her fingers tracing the faded ink of her father's handwriting with reverence and tentative hope. The sentences were a puzzle peppered with cryptic phrases, coded emotions, and glimpses of truths she had yearned for yet feared to uncover. Each line resonated with the weight of untold stories, and in those moments, she felt a fragile connection bridge the years that had stretched between them. Her heart beat audibly in the quiet room, a nervous rhythm syncing with the relentless pulse of the sea beyond. With every word she deciphered, Emily's world subtly shifted, the familiar contours of family and self beginning to blur and reform under the relentless tide of discovery. The air was thick with the scent of salt and aged paper, mingling in a bittersweet perfume that clung to the corners of the room. Rain began to patter softly against the windowpane, the delicate drumming echoing the stirring emotions within, a dance of melancholy and awakening. Her green eyes, usually so guarded, widened with a flicker of something akin to wonder, tempered by fear. "I've never really known you," she murmured, voice cracking under the weight of truth. "But maybe, through these pages, I'm beginning to understand." Suddenly, a sharp gust swept through the room, scattering loose papers and stirring the diary's pages wildly. Emily's fingers clutched it instinctively, anchoring herself to the fragile narrative that now seemed like her only lifeline. A faint sound outside the distant toll of the lighthouse bell rung clear through the fog and rain. The ancient sentinel stood steadfast on the horizon, its beam cutting through the darkness like a promise of guidance, of revelation. To Emily, it was a symbol of her own journey, illuminating hidden paths amidst the encroaching shadows. The mounting intensity in the room was palpable. With each revelation, the diary pulled her deeper into a labyrinth of emotions, hope mingled with dread, curiosity shadowed by the specter of betrayal. She hesitated on a particularly poignant entry, a cryptic passage hinting at secrets long buried, at a pain veiled beneath layers of family folklore. Her fingers trembled. "What are you hiding, Dad?" Emily whispered, a lone tear tracing the curve of her cheek. The room seemed to hold its breath, suspended between past and present, silence and secrets. Outside, the ocean surged, relentless and vast, a mirrored reflection of Emily's own fragile yet growing resolve. And as the lighthouse's beams swept steadily over the darkened waters, Emily made her silent vow to uncover the truths, no matter how deep or painful, to reclaim a legacy hidden beneath twilight shadows. The story held steady in a fragile pause, the diary's forgotten pages waiting to whisper their secrets, as Emily sat poised at the edge of a world transformed by the relentless tides of memory. The rain had moderated to a gentle mist by the time Emily stepped out of her apartment, the cold autumn air crisp against her skin and the weight of the diary tucked under her arm. The narrow streets of the coastal town were shrouded in a pale fog, cloaking the crumbling Victorian facades and the scattered remnants of forgotten stories. Street lamps flickered weakly, their light trembling in the mist like hesitant truths waiting to be uncovered. Each step towards her mother's house was measured, her heart thudding oddly, not just from the chill but from the storm gathering within. The diary's cryptic passages had begun to unravel, revealing hints of a past shadowed with complexity and doubt. Family portraits and old letters were no longer innocent tokens but fragments of a puzzle whose edges cut deep. Arriving at the familiar gate, Emily hesitated, the rusted iron seeming heavier than before. The garden was overgrown, wild with neglect, mirroring the tangled emotions she wrestled with. Her fingers clutched the diary tighter, the leather cover creaking softly. Inside, her mother's presence was quiet but palpable, a fragile tension threading the space between them like static electricity. Their eyes met, green and hard-soft, reflecting years of love edged with silence. "Mom, can we talk?" Emily's voice was steady but laced with the tremor of uncertainty. Her mother nodded, gestures reserved but open, guiding her toward the worn sofa bathed in the dim light of a single lamp. The conversation was hesitant at first, words tiptoeing around painful memories and buried secrets. Emily's revelations from the diary hung heavily in the air, each sentence a stone dropped into the still waters of their relationship. "Your father was not the man you thought," her mother finally said, voice breaking like fragile glass. "There were things I never told you because I was afraid to shatter the image you held." The room darkened with the weight of confession as Emily listened, the silence punctuated by quiet sobs and long pauses. The diary's entries became a bridge, though rickety, between past pain and tentative understanding. Later, as Emily walked back through the fog-clad streets, her mind raced with the newfound fragments of truth. The lighthouse loomed ahead, its silhouette a stark, lonely sentinel against the stormy sky. Its beams sliced through the mist, a guiding light promising clarity amid darkness. Her breath caught as she paused beneath it, the ocean's roar mingling with the sound of her pounding heart. She opened the diary again, tracing the faded script, feeling both weighted and strangely buoyed by the revelations. Then, a photograph slipped from the diary's pages, a weathered image of her father with a woman Emily did not recognize, their expressions intimate yet shadowed by secrecy. Her fingers trembled as she held it, the fractures in her family's history now painfully, irrevocably clear. The lighthouse's beam shifted, casting flickering shadows across her face, illuminating the conflict within, hope battling despair. She looked up into the gray sky, rains beginning again, and whispered to the fierce wind, "Who are you, really?" The night swallowed the question, leaving Emily poised on the precipice of a truth that threatened to reshape everything. The tension was palpable, as the diary's secrets beckoned her deeper, the journey toward understanding far from over. The rain hung steady outside Emily's window, drumming an insistent rhythm against the glass that matched the turmoil roiling inside her. The fading light pooled across the polished floor, distorted and restless in the muted reflection of the diary's worn leather cover cradled in her hands. Her fingers trembled ever so slightly as she turned a page in, heavy with words soaked in secrecy and anguish. Each entry bled deeper into the shadows of her father's life, revealing fractures she had not dared imagine. A name whispered in fading ink, a clandestine signature, an unexpected woman entwined in her father's past like a ghost suddenly materializing from the fog. The room seemed to constrict around her, walls closing in on the fragile boundary between truth and denial. Her breath caught as she unfolded a yellowed photograph slipped between the pages, a portrait tinged by time, capturing her father's face alongside a woman whose eyes held stories untold, tenderness tempered by sorrow. The realization was a silent thunderclap, fracturing the careful construct of her family narrative. "Who are you?" The whisper escaped her lips, a tremulous plea to a past that had finally broken its silence. Her thoughts swirled with fragmented images, childhood shadows, laughter that felt borrowed, moments hollowed by the unspoken. The diary's pages lingered in her mind like submerged stones, heavy with the weight of secrets, shifting beneath the tides of her unfolding pain. She forced herself outward, stepping into the cold evening air thick with salt and fog. The ocean's endless breath echoed the tumult within, waves crashing relentlessly against jagged rocks below, each surge a reflection of her fractured identity and the uncharted future beckoning in the distance. Drawn to the lighthouse's solitary beam piercing through the gathering mist, Emily felt a profound ache of isolation yet an unyielding desire for guidance. The forgotten sentinel stood resilient, a beacon amid obscurity, a symbol that even in the darkest truths, light could find its way. Her trembling fingers tightened around the leather-bound diary, the final lines of an entry laying bare a vulnerability she had never known. A secret love lost to time, a regret etched in stealthy confessions, and a hope fleeting as the sea breeze whispered through cracked windows. The distant cry of a seabird cut sharply through the air, a piercing call for freedom and forgiveness. Emily's eyes filled, the fragile armor of certainty fracturing under the tidal surge of emotion. A sudden knock on the door shattered the reverie. Her mother's voice, fractured and hesitant, floated through an invitation tinged with fear and sorrow. Emily rose slowly, heart pounding with a mixture of dread and resolve. "Mom," she whispered, the single word a fragile bridge between fractured past and tentative future. As she crossed the threshold, the diary pressed tightly to her chest. She stepped into the dim hallway where shadow and light wove uncertain patterns, a path looming toward reckoning and reconciliation. And beneath that uncertain glow, where family and fate collided, Emily's journey found its compelling turning point, the awakening before the inevitable collapse and transformation. The night held its breath as the door closed softly behind her, a silent seal upon the fragile truth now stirring within. The storm outside raged, relentless and unforgiving, the wind lashing against the cracked windowpanes of Emily's bedroom. Inside, the room was a cocoon of shadow and muted blue-gray light, thick with the scent of damp wood and old paper. The leather-bound diary lay open on her lap, but her gaze was vacant, lost deep in the churning sea of revelation and despair that had overtaken her. Outside, the ocean's relentless waves crashed against jagged cliffs, echoing the turmoil pounding within her chest. The lighthouse on the distant shore stood shrouded in mist, its beam weak and erratic, mirroring the fracturing light of Emily's hope. It symbolized isolation more than guidance, now a silent sentinel watching over secrets that threatened to tear her world asunder. Her fingers trembled as they traced the faded ink on a devastating entry, words that shattered the fragile image she had cherished of her father. The man she idolized, the steadfast figure anchoring her fading sense of self, was now a stranger cloaked in betrayal and hidden truths. Her breathing faltered, shallow and erratic, like the flickering candle that fought against the encroaching shadows. The silence was suffocating. Every creak and whisper of the old house amplified the thundering collapse of everything she thought she knew. Her mind replayed fractured memories, laughter now tainted, conversations distorted by unspoken lies. Faces blurred into a swirling fog of doubt and pain, her heart sinking with each revelation that peeled away the layers of her identity. She curled inward, the diary pressing against her chest like a fragile shield, yet she felt more exposed than ever. The room seemed to close around her, walls bending with the weight of her grief and confusion. The rain drummed relentlessly, a relentless rhythm that matched the beat of her fractured soul. A tear traced a silent path down her cheek, cold and unforgiving. She whispered into the dark, barely audible, "Who am I without you?" The lighthouse's beam faltered again, swallowed by the thick fog, and a violent gust rattled the window panes, as if the very universe convulsed with her despair. Her silhouette was a fragile ghost against the dim light, caught between the pull of the past and the void of an uncertain future. The diary slipped from her hands, landing softly on the floor, pages splayed like the wings of a fallen bird. The weight of loss pressed down, crushing the last vestiges of certainty. Time seemed to stutter, moments stretching thin until all that remained was the hollow ache of unraveling a soul adrift on storm-tossed seas, searching for a beacon that had dimmed. And as the night deepened, suffocating and complete, Emily closed her eyes, surrendering to the engulfing darkness, the profound silence of a heart broken, lost, and alone. The night had deepened into an oppressive stillness, the heavy cloak of fog muffling even the faintest whisper beyond the cracked windowpanes of Emily's apartment. The dim light of a single bedside lamp flickered weakly, casting elongated shadows that clung to the peeling wallpaper and worn furniture like memories refusing to let go. The ocean's distant roar throbbed like a heartbeat in the gloom, relentless, indifferent, echoing the turmoil swelling within her. Emily sat motionless in her favorite armchair, the leather cracked and softened by years of use, her slender frame dwarfed by the oppressive silence. The diary lay open on her lap, its fragile pages heavy with secrets that now felt like chains wrapped around her heart. Her green eyes, usually vibrant and searching, were glassy with exhaustion, fixed but unfocused as if peering into a void only she could see. Every line she'd read had slowly dismantled the image she'd held of her father, each revelation a dagger twisting deeper into the fabric of her identity. The man she idolized was not the flawless hero of family lore but a stranger with hidden sins and blurred truths. The weight of that shattering knowledge pressed down, relentless and unyielding. The room was thick with the scent of cold air seeping through poorly sealed windows, mixing with the faint aroma of salt carried from the nearby ocean. Her fingertips brushed across the leather cover, tracing the embossed lighthouse symbol, a beacon now turned into a somber emblem of isolation and fractured guidance. As the rain tapped erratically against the glass, a sudden chill crept over her skin, crawling like the creeping cold of loss and abandonment. Her breath fogged the window as she leaned forward, staring unseeing into the night where the distant lighthouse beam swung slowly, a solitary rhythm in the enveloping darkness. Her voice broke the silence, a mere whisper swallowed swiftly by the damp air. "What am I now?" The question hung unanswered, echoing softly against the vacant spaces of the room and the hollow chambers of her heart. From the floor, the diary's pages fluttered in the draft, scattering fleeting shadows like ghosts dancing between truth and despair. The fragile veil between memory and nightmare thinned. She felt as though time itself fractured, moments bleeding into one another without mercy. Her body curled smaller, retreating into itself like the town's abandoned houses cowering beneath the slow, ebbing tide. A faint sound from the hallway, a creak, a whisper fluttered against the silence, but Emily did not move. In her stillness, she was a figure frozen in muted blue shadows, an island adrift in a sea of sorrow. The ocean's endless murmur rose into a crescendo outside, waves breaking wild and unrelenting against unseen rocks. And beneath the soft halo of the dying lamp, Emily's gaze fell upon the amulet resting on the floor beside her chair, hanging just out of reach, a solitary beacon in her darkness. Her fingers twitched, stretching towards it, but the motion faltered, arrested by the overwhelming desolation. The room, the sea, the night, everything held its breath in reverent stillness. And in that abyss of quiet despair, Emily sat breaking, suspended between the crumbling past and a future blurred into shadow. The world darkened, and for a moment, all that remained was a fragile, aching silence. The lonely attic room was bathed in a heavy twilight, dim and suffused with the scent of old paper and faded memories. Emily sat cross-legged on the floor, the leather-bound diary resting open before her like a fragile relic precariously balanced on the edge of ruin. Outside, the ocean sighed, its waves chasing the shore in an endless, patient rhythm that echoed the turmoil haunting her heart. The weight of shattered illusions pressed down on her, the fragments of identity fractured by the revelations inked in her father's trembling hand. She traced the faint lines of a lone diary entry, hesitant yet drawn to its whispered promise. The words spoke softly of regret, of a past too painful to reconcile but impossible to ignore. An apology disguised within the smallest details, a glimmer of hope hidden among the shadows. Emily's bruised soul felt the faintest flicker stir, a spark fragile yet undeniable. She closed her eyes briefly, the ache inside gathering strength not to break, but to heal. Her fingertips lingered on the diary's pages, willing the past to speak, to connect the jagged edges. A muted breeze stirred the curtains, carrying with it the salting breath of the sea and the distant silhouette of the aged lighthouse, a steadfast sentinel against the creeping dark. Its feeble light shimmered through the haze, a beacon both solitary and unwavering. Her breath caught as she recalled the lighthouse's symbol carved on the diary's cover, a mirror to her own journey, a guiding truth seeking to pierce the gloom of doubt and loss. Her eyes opened, filled with a fragile clarity that tempered the bruises of betrayal. The painful pieces of her father's past, once suffocating, now whispered a story of human complexity, of mistakes and quiet atonement hidden between the broken lines. The room seemed to hold its breath alongside her. Somewhere in the silence, the ocean's constant murmur harmonized with the soft flutter of a page turning, a delicate unveiling of secrets both painful and redemptive. Emily stood slowly, the diary clasped to her chest, a talisman of the truths that would shape her path forward. The dusk deepened outside, shadows melting into night, yet within her, that small light blossomed, gentle but persistent. The faintest smile touched her lips, not of triumph, but of fragile understanding. Her story was no longer just one of loss. It was becoming a journey toward light, toward the promises hidden in the depths of silence and sea. She stepped toward the window, the breeze catching her hair, the cool night air soothing but awakening. The lighthouse cast its pulsing beam over the dark waters, a promise carved in light and shadow. Emily's gaze lingered on that guiding glow, her heart steadying with the realization that though the past was fractured, the future awaited her courage. The scene closed on her silhouette framed against the lighthouse's radiant sweep, the quiet cadence of crashing waves underscoring a renewed resolve, a beginning born from the embrace of both pain and hope. The storm had spent itself, leaves and debris swirling softly in the lingering drizzle. Emily stood at the threshold of her childhood home, the soft glow of dawn illuminating the weathered facade, the once vibrant house now subdued under layers of gray and moss. Her eyes, a penetrating green reflecting a tumult of emotion, looked out over the quiet street where shadows stretched long in the early light. Clutching the tattered diary to her chest, she stepped forward, each footfall tentative yet resolute toward a path she now sensed was destined for her. The ocean in the distance echoed like a heartbeat, steady and unwavering, as if beckoning her to listen to the pulse of her own truth. Slowly, she moved through the garden, overgrown and unruly, the weeds grasping at her ankles like memories she had long tried to forget. The ancient lighthouse stood on the rocky promontory, its silhouette faint against the mist-shrouded horizon, yet its unwavering beam flickered faintly, a distant but steadfast testament to guidance and hope. Inside, the house felt different, smelling of damp wood and age, yet infused with a quiet dignity. Emily's gaze lingered on relics of her childhood, faded photographs, a broken clock, a dusty mantle. Her fingertips brushed over the spine of the diary, its leather cover rough yet familiar, like an old friend warning her that beneath the surface of silence, understanding awaited. She took a deep breath, the air thick with the scent of salt and past. As her eyes traced the pages filled with her father's hesitant script, a flicker of warmth penetrated the gloom. The weight of secrets was still heavy, but she felt a subtle shift, an awakening, gentle and tentative. The ocean's roar grew softer in her ears as she recognized the truth, their stories intertwined, fractured but still part of her. The lighthouse's beam, a fragile thread of light stretching through the mist, became a symbol of her own emerging clarity, a gentle promise that even in darkness, there was hope. Her hand rested on the diary, a silent vow to listen to the unspoken truths buried within her family's history. For a moment, she closed her eyes, allowing the storm of doubt and despair to settle into a quiet resolve. The first brushstrokes of a new chapter had begun, a fragile dawn of understanding, waiting to be nurtured. The scene lingered on her silhouette against the breaking light, the ocean beyond whispering secrets in a language only the soul could understand. A single gull cried out overhead, soaring effortlessly into the expanding sky, embodying the fleeting yet profound possibility that change, like dawn, was inevitable if only she dared to embrace it. The dim glow of the command room flickered irregularly, casting eerie shadows over Emily's determined face. Her hand trembled as she spread the yellowed, brittle pages of her father's diary across the cluttered desk. The weight of the revelation still pressed heavily, yet within her grew a flicker of something new, resolve tempered by the pain of betrayal and a desperate desire for understanding. Outside, the wind howled like a restless spirit, rattling loose windows and stirring the dust motes in the air. The ocean's distant roar persisted, a relentless heartbeat echoing her own tumult. She read the faded ink, each word a thread pulling her closer to truths buried beneath years of silence. A photograph slipped from the pages, the image grainy and faded, yet hauntingly intimate. Her father, captured in a fleeting moment with a woman she had never known, stared at her from the past, their eyes holding secrets she was now beginning to decipher. The uncovered connection ignited a new fire within her, a mix of anger and hope swirling together. "You were more than the stories told," she whispered, voice steady, the conviction clearing the fog of doubt. "You left behind clues, whispers in the silence you thought would last forever." Her gaze centered on the faint ciphers embedded in the diary's margins, symbols and dates that hinted at an unspoken chapter of his life. With trembling fingers, she began piecing them together, unraveling a trail of kindness and regret that defied her previous notions. The past was not just shadows of betrayal but a mosaic of human frailty and redemption. Suddenly, the lighthouse's beam cut through the stormy gloom outside, a steady, unwavering light piercing the darkness. Its glow seemed to pulse with a silent heartbeat, a guiding force illuminating her path forward. The symbolic lighthouse, long a silent witness to loneliness and revelation, now appeared as a beacon in her tumultuous journey. As she deciphered the final clues, her mind awhirl with the enormity of her discovery, a profound surge of clarity washed over her. The truth was a seed she had nurtured in secret, growing into a mighty tree of understanding. Her father's hidden kindness, regret, and unspoken love now revealed themselves in the quiet strength of the symbols and secrets he had left. Her eyes, once clouded with doubt, now shone with a fierce light. She reached out, grasping the diary firmly, the leather rough beneath her fingers. "Your silence was your shield and your salvation, but it was never the entire story," she declared softly. "And I am finally ready to hear it." The scene lingered on her silhouette against the flickering glow of the lighthouse, a fragile yet unbreakable figure rooted in newfound purpose. The storm outside began to subside, the wind diminishing into a gentle hush, a whispered promise that darkness yields to dawn. In that moment, Emily understood her journey was only beginning, the past a tapestry she would now weave with understanding, empathy, and hope. The unspoken sacrifices, the secrets long buried in shadows, had been waiting for her to find them, and in doing so, she discovered the strength to carry their legacy into a future reborn from the depths of silence and pain. The storm that had battered the coastline eased into a gentle drizzle, the clouds parting just enough to reveal a faint streak of dawn. Emily stood at the edge of the lighthouse's viewing deck, the wind whipping softly around her, carrying the salty scent of the ocean. Her face, illuminated in a soft, golden hue, was calm but resolute. Her fingers brushed the surface of the old diary tucked into her coat pocket, its leather cracked but resilient, much like herself. The lighthouse's beam, once a distant marker of isolation, now flickered steadily, piercing through the remaining gloom as if guiding her through the shadows of her past. The vast expanse of the sea stretched before her, endless and wild, mirroring her own journey, rugged yet alive. Her gaze lingered on the horizon, where the sky was painted with shades of pink and amber, promising new beginnings. The ocean's ebb and flow echoed her heart's quiet transformation, breaking free from the tumult of secrets, regrets, and loss. The weight of the discovery, the truth about her father's hidden life, had been a burden she'd carried too long. Now, it finally felt like a chapter closed in a story she was ready to reclaim. Beneath her veneer of quiet strength, an ember of hope glowed brighter. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, feeling the cool air cleanse the despair and doubts that once held sway. The wind brushed past her, gentle but unrelenting, whispering promises of healing and liberation. In her hand, she clenched the diary softly, the edges worn but containing the full narrative of a man who had fought battles both visible and unseen, whose love was buried deep beneath layers of silence. Its secrets, now uncovered, shimmered in the morning light, a testament to resilience and the human capacity for redemption. Her lips curved into a faint, steady smile, one not born of triumph but of acceptance. She knew her journey was only beginning, but her steps were firm, her soul unburdened by the shadows of the past. As she turned away from the lighthouse, her figure a silhouette against the awakening sky, her heart felt lighter, more whole. The ocean's vastness enfolded her, a silent witness to her transformation, promising that whatever storms lay ahead, she was now anchored in her truth. The scene faded slowly, leaving her standing at the brink of this new chapter, calm and resilient, a woman reborn from the depths of silence, embracing both her pain and her strength as the horizon continued to glow with the soft promise of dawn. Beneath a sky mottled with shades of pink and lavender, Emily stood at the water's edge, the salt air weaving softly through her auburn hair. The lighthouse towered behind her, a steadfast sentinel etched against the horizon's endless canvas of blues and grays. Her hands cradled the worn leather diary, the artifact that had unraveled her family's hidden truths, and she gazed out over the restless ocean, each wave a gentle reminder of life's ceaseless ebb and flow. The wind carried whispers, memories of errors, regrets, and sacrifices, murmurs only the heart could understand. The storm of revelations had finally cooled, leaving a fragile peace that settled deep within her. The turbulent search for the truth, born of longing and pain, had transformed into a quiet acceptance, a recognition that pain and liberation, loss and love, coexist in the intricate tapestry of her lineage. Her green eyes, now calm and clear, reflected the dawn's first light, soft yet unyielding. She gently smoothed the pages of the diary, feeling the delicate contours of her father's words, like a heartbeat echoing softly in her fingertips. The secrets he had kept hidden for decades no longer threatened her. Instead, they became part of Hera foundation for understanding and empathy. The lighthouse's beam pulsed steadily, piercing through the dawn mist, a symbol of guidance and resilience. It bathed her in a gentle glow, illuminating her figure against the vast, awakening sea, a visual hymn to the power of truth and the courage to face it. A deep breath filled her with the salty air, invigorating her for the journey ahead. No longer haunted by the shadows of her father's secrets, she felt a surge of compassion for the man who had struggled beneath layers of silence, and for herself, as she stepped into a new chapter of connection and renewal. With a tender smile, Emily reached out and touched the lighthouse's sturdy wall and spoken thank you for the silent guidance through her storm. Her gaze lifted once more to the horizon, where the rising sun painted the sky with hues of happy and eternal promise that even in the depths of darkness, light persists. In this still, sacred moment, she understood her own story woven with the threads of her family's hidden past, now illuminated by her willingness to seek the truth. And with each beat of her heart, she embraced the fullness of her identity, feeling peace and resolve ripple outward, as vast and enduring as the ocean beside her. The air outside the lighthouse was thick with the scent of salt and the awakening promise of morning, but Emily's gaze was fixed inward, her expression a mosaic of quiet understanding. She stood motionless at the edge of the rocky cliff, her auburn hair catching the early light as a gentle breeze ruffled it, whispering a lullaby of reconciliation and release. Her hands, still trembling slightly from the storm of revelations, now rested loosely by her sides, open to the calm that awaited. The lighthouse's beam sliced through the overcast sky, steady and unwavering, a symbol of guidance she now understood deeply. Its light had long been a silent witness to secrets kept in shadows, yet it also shone as a beacon of hope for those willing to see beyond the darkness. In her heart, the weight of the past lifted, replaced by a shimmering clarity. Tears welled in her eyes, not of despair but of acceptance, the understanding that her father's human complexity, like the ocean's depths, was layered with hope, regret, love, and flaws. The pain had been a necessary journey, a bridge to truths she was now at peace with. She placed her palm against the cold stone, feeling the roughness beneath her fingertips, a tactile reminder of resilience. Her eyes drifted over the expansive horizon, where sky and sea met in an endless embrace, echoing her own newfound harmony. The ocean responded with a gentle ebb and flow, vast and timeless, mirroring the emotional tides that had carried her through despair into liberation. The silent stars, beginning to emerge above, small and distant, watched as she took a slow, deliberate step back from the precipice, an affirmation that she was no longer defined solely by secrets or pain. Her breath was slow and steady now, each inhalation a conscious surrender to understanding and forgiveness. Her posture, once rigid with uncertainty, softened into strength and elegant acceptance of the intricate tapestry of her family's history. A single seagull soared overhead, its wings catching the dawn's first light, a symbol of freedom that embraced her. Her face relaxed into a quiet smile, one that spoke of peace, of bridges mended, of stories finally told and understood. And in that suspended moment, she felt a profound kinship with the horizon, the vast, open promise of a future unburdened by shadows. The camera pulled back slowly, revealing her silhouette against the sweeping grandeur of the sea and sky, a quiet testament to resilience, growth, and the unbreakable human spirit. The scene faded into a gentle, cinematic silence, leaving her standing at the precipice of a new beginning, her spirit illuminated and at peace, the dawn of acceptance. The dawn unfurled in the sky, a canvas painted with soft pinks and muted golds, casting a gentle glow over the tranquil ocean. Emily stood alone at the lighthouse's edge, the wind stirring her auburn hair as she gazed outward, beyond the horizon where sea met sky in an endless embrace. Her posture was calm, no longer weighed down by the shadows of secrets, but lifted by a quiet sense of peace. In her hand, she held the diary, its pages still faintly trembling from the journey they had taken her on. These fragile words had unraveled decades of silence, fractured illusions, and hidden truths. Now, they shimmered with a subdued light, a symbol of understanding and acceptance. She traced her fingertips over the leather cover, feeling the roughness still echo the struggles endured, her father's complexity, his kindness and regret woven into every line. Behind her, the lighthouse's beam stretched outward, steady and unwavering, a beacon of guidance in the morning mist. Its light pierced through the lingering fog, illuminating her figure against the vast, unfolding landscape. The ocean's rhythmic ebb and flow mirrored her newfound serenity, each wave washing away remnants of doubt, leaving only clarity and hope. Her eyes, once filled with confusion and turmoil, now reflected a gentle resolve, shimmering softly with comprehension. She took a slow breath, inhaling the salt and freshness of the morning, feeling the cool breeze embrace her, whispering promises of renewal. The silence was thick and sacred, every gust of wind, every ripple in the water, a silent commentary on the journey of discovery she had embarked upon. The storm of secrets had subsided, replaced by a quiet harmony, a culmination of pain, forgiveness, and acceptance. She lowered her gaze to the diary, then back to the endless horizon, where the ocean's vastness seemed to offer a boundless promise, A future of stories yet to be written. Her chest rose and fell gently, the stillness settling like dew upon her skin, calm, complete. In that moment, Emily understood her next chapter was hers to shape unencumbered by the weight of unspoken pasts. The shadows had receded, displaced by the peaceful waves and the guiding light of her truth. She closed her eyes for a fleeting moment, absorbing the serenity, the quiet power of knowing and of being seen, truly and fully. The camera pulled back slowly, revealing her silhouette against the sunrise, a quiet testament to resilience, healing, and the enduring strength of a heart finally at peace. How would you handle discovering a parent's secret past?